Welcome to this session on optimizing and accelerating your RMS deployment, your rights management services deployment. My name is Enrique Sagesse. I'm a program manager with the Information Protection Group, the group that makes ADRMS, Azure RMS, Azure Key Vault, certificate services, and a few other information protection technologies. And I'm going to be focusing today on rights management services. Briefly, I'm going to be spending some time explaining why RMS, how it's used, what's the benefit to the business. I know that some of you already know that, that's why you're here, but I want to give it a new twist so you understand better not only why you should be doing this, or why we think you should be doing this, but also what's the framing and the thinking for the product moving forward so you can kind of predict where it's going and how you will be utilizing it next after you deploy this. Then a little bit about the architecture and how this is implemented. And finally, most of this session about how to get it there, how to get it deployed, and to get it to do what you want it to do. Sorry about that. So one thing I want to talk about, let me skip ahead a little bit here, is do you manage your IT environment? If I ask you that, every one of you is going to say, yes, we do manage our IT environment. But do you manage it everywhere? Do you manage everything about it? If we start with the users and we ask, do we manage users? You will say, yes, we do manage our users. We have inventories of your users. We have directories that contain all of our users. We can authenticate our users. We can control what they can do and where they can do it. We can track their accesses. We can revoke access once a user leaves the company. And we can customize the user experiences. We can ask the same question about devices, and the answer is yes. To a bigger or lesser extent, you probably manage your devices. You can get an inventory of your devices. You can authenticate device access. You can configure devices centrally. You can deploy them remotely via things such as image deployment or operating system deployment or app stores or things like that. You can gather configurations and logs from the devices. You can block undesired actions and many other things. So we're in a great spot there. We do manage our devices. We ask the same questions about applications. Can you inventory your applications? Can you verify application legitimacy? Can you do things such as checking for malware or unauthorized applications? Can you deploy and manage and configure applications remotely? Can you block undesired software? And the answer, again, is a yes. I can do all that because we have great tools such as app stores, or we have software deployment tools, inventorying tools. Great things have happened over the last few decades. And today, we have the ability to do all that. Now, if you ask the same question about our information, we do all that I mentioned, like managing devices, users, and applications for the sake of actually controlling my information. It's called information technology for a reason. Do we manage our information, the information itself, the documents? If I ask the question, who here has an inventory of your company's documents? Nobody does. I see no hands raising, and I expect that. Nobody has an inventory of your documents. You may have a database in inventory, or you may have a couple documents that you can think of that are important. But nobody has a good inventory of their sensitive information because it's created by users in random places. It might be in a pen drive. It might be in somebody else's hard drive. How could I have an inventory of my files? Can you control access to these files centrally? Can you say, any file that contains information about project X from now on is only accessible to my managers and engineers? You cannot do that. You can do that on a location, but not in general. Maybe somebody has already a copy of the file, and you cannot control that because it left your hands. Can you control what operations can be done on these files? And by whom and under what circumstances? Certainly, in most cases, the answer is no. Can you track usage of this data? Can you answer the question, who viewed this data before the product released? Or which of my partners are opening my CAD designs? Or when do my customers look at my price list? You cannot do that. You don't have that information. You have that information if the information is on a website and you can log the accesses. But once your information leaves your hands, you have no knowledge about how this information is used. Finally, once you send information out, once it's in the hands of your users or somebody else's users, can you revoke it? Can you kill that information so nobody has access? Let's say that information becomes obsolete, or it was wrong in the first place, or it was shared too broadly and you need to control that, or you made a mistake, you said something foolish on an email. Can you kill that information? Can you ensure that it is never seen again? No. Once you give the data to somebody, it's out. So it begs the question, Why are we managing 3/4 of our IT environment? And in particular, the one that matters most, the information itself, we are not managing it at all. Today, we are in the 21st century in 3 of these pillars of IT, and on the 4th one, we are in the prehistory. We have nothing. So what we are missing is information management. There are lots of tools that claim to be information management, but they're actually, at best, document management, and at best, they manage a location. They don't manage the information itself. What we need is for information to be manageable. We need the same things that we have for devices, for users, for applications, etc. We need information to be uniquely identifiable. Something that I say, this file is this file. It doesn't matter where it moves. For example, a GUID that is tamper-proof that follows the file wherever it goes. We need information to be protected from illicit access, but not in a location, not in a folder, not an access control list in a specific location, but in itself, to be able to authenticate and control who can open this file every time it's opened, and to make sure that nobody can bypass those policies, that the file is strongly authenticated and encrypted so nobody can abuse that. I need also that usage policies are enforced, because it is very little value in protecting a file in a location that anybody can open or some users can open, and then they can copy the content into another file, and then I lose track. That file that contains the same information as the original one, but I control 0 on that one. So we need something that controls who can perform which operations, such as rights management. And finally, I need accountability. I need the ability to track usage of these files. I need to be able to say, how is this file being used, by whom, when, where, what operations are performed, etc., in order to be in control of this information. The interesting thing is, when we look at these, technologies already exist to do each of these. And they have existed for a while, but they were never integrated in a way that enables these scenarios, that enables us to manage our information. But think about what you will get if you got all that, if you were able to do all those things, if you had all those features working in a seamless way. First, you will get security, which is a big first, because your documents will be protected from illicit access. Somebody that is not authorized to access the files will not be able to open the files. And you will be able to block undesired actions by your authorized users. So if you give the file to somebody, it doesn't mean that you give them full control over it. They can do only the things that you expect them to be able to do. They cannot print the file and forget it in a bus. They cannot copy the content and add it to a blog, whatever you prevent them from doing. So that's great. But in addition to that, since you have all the traceability of these capabilities that I described, you also get the knowledge that your information is secure. It's not only about the data being secure, but also about looking at a control panel and saying, my data is being properly used. But what is this? Why are these users doing this with this file in this location? I need to investigate that. But you have the ability to react. You have the ability to know what's going on, to know that nothing should be going wrong because the data is protected. But if something goes wrong, you can act on it. In addition to that, that's security and the ability to control security and to know that you're secure. But in addition to that, you get productivity. And this is important because we all know that users, the average user, doesn't care one bit about security. There are countless studies that prove things such as if you offer a bar of chocolate to a user, they will give you their password for it. And there has been, there are plenty of studies like that. Users don't care at all about security. If you tell them you have to do 2 more clicks and be secure, they are not going to do the 2 more clicks. They're going to just save 2 clicks and be insecure because they don't see the value. Users today, they are still complaining that we're forcing them to use a password. So we cannot expect them to do anything for the sake of security. So we have to fool them into being secure. We have to give them something in exchange, something that they will like to do, that they would like to have, that as a result of that, they also get security. And that is productivity. Everybody wants to be more productive, whereas it is to get a bigger bonus or to get home earlier. They want to be more productive and get things done quicker. So what if you could know how your documents are being used? Let's say a salesperson. I send a sales price to my 50 customers, and 3 months later, I see that this guy is looking at my sales prices, on my price list. Well, maybe I should give them a call. Maybe they don't call me in 2 days. I'll give them a call and offer them a promotion. In every scenario, in every usage case that you can think of, there is a way to do that better if you know how your information is being used. Maybe you're trying to add content to a document. You look at the document and says, well, it doesn't have the latest updates. Where is the version that has the latest updates? Who has it? Who has done the latest changes? Knowing how your information is being used really can boost your productivity. It can also help you to collaborate more efficiently, because traditionally companies have to choose between collaborating and risking data disclosure, or not collaborating and being sure that they're being unproductive. I either send you the data and I hope that you're not going to send it to somebody else, which probably eventually will happen, or I don't send you the data and you're being less productive, and as a consequence, I'm being less productive. But if I can give you the data with a leash, I can give you the data and know that if you do something wrong, I can yank the cord. Or I can give you the data and expire it after a certain number of days. Or only restrict you to be able to do certain tasks on this data. That allows me to collaborate more rather than less. I can share, taking a smaller risk, and I can share more. So this means that users can do things that they couldn't do before, and they will pay the price of 2 clicks if there need to be. Also, users can stay in control. They can fix their mistakes. If I shared a file and then I realize that the file is obsolete or my prices have gone up and I have to explain that to my customers, I can just shut down that file and give them a new version with the right prices. And maybe I can check on my logs and see, oh, but these 3 guys already saw this price list. Let me give them a call. But I don't care about the others because they never got to see their own file. I can be informed when something goes wrong, like what are these files? Why are my files being opened from North Korea? I don't have any offices there. So I can see that something is wrong and I can take action. This helps user productivity. This helps users to be in control. And everybody's a control freak when it comes to their job. So this will get users motivated to use this information. In addition to that, my management, my company leadership can get more insight. They can discover new partners. Who's opening my designs? Who's viewing my documents? Who's building my stuff? It's a well-known problem in some industries that companies outsource some job that in turn get outsourced to other companies that do not have the same processes, or they may be using slave labor. How do I know that's happening? Well, who's looking at my documents and my designs? I can discover partners. I can enforce contracts. I can understand my data flows, external and internal. I can figure out who are my leaders in this company? Who are the people that write stuff that others read? Or how do groups collaborate with each other? Should I relocate these 2 groups based on the number of information exchanges that there are between them? All those things allow me to optimize my business. So this is not only about security, but I'm not fooling myself. You're here because of security. This is what you need. You need information protection. That's a big problem in business today. The rest is the reason why people will use it. So if this is all so great, why nobody's really doing it? Why nobody is really using information management? It's because it's hard. It has to work in the real world. First, it has to work for my real users, not only my internal users. It has to work for everybody my users can have a need to collaborate with, which means everybody in the world. Because I don't know who's going to be my next partnership. I cannot be chasing my users saying, who do you intend to collaborate next week, so I establish a partnership with them. I need it to happen naturally. I need to be able to send a protected document, a managed document, to anyone in the planet. And it needs to work for them. And it needs to work in my devices and also in their devices. Maybe I'm using only Windows, but my partners may be using Macs, maybe using iOS, maybe using Android, BlackBerry. I need to make sure that it will work, at least for the vast majority of devices out there. I need to be able to make the assumption that if I send something to someone, the next thing I'm going to hear is, hey, I couldn't open your document, unless that's not the person that was intended to open the document. It also needs to work on all applications and all data types, because I cannot train my users to use different types of files or different types of technologies to protect different things. I cannot tell them, hey, use S-MIME for your emails, and use RMS for your Office documents, and PGP for your CAD drawings. And users do not think in those terms, so I need to be able to tell them, click these 3 buttons when you need to do this. And finally, the most challenging part is it needs to work in the real world of IT, which means it needs to work in the cloud, transparently. It needs to work on premises, again, transparently. It needs to work in my mobile devices. It needs to work in my line of business applications. It needs to work everywhere in a natural way. We cannot afford to have secure data to be a second-class citizen of the IT environment. It needs to just work. And for users, it means that there needs to be no significant loss of functionality when they do things the right way. Well, the good news is that all of this is part of Azure RMS. We've been working very, very hard over the last couple of years to make this the real platform for information protection and management. We have encryption and identity integrated access controls. So you protect a file, it gets strong encryption, and wherever you move the file is still protected. And wherever you move the file, next time somebody has to open it, they will have to authenticate in a seamless way. Once authenticated, the user gets the rights to open the file and to perform the operations I gave them to perform. So I have also rights enforcement. I have the guarantee that if I didn't give you a right to print this file, you're not going to be able to print this file. If I didn't give you the right to copy content from this file, you're not going to be able to do that. Now, that aspect is what we call a soft promise. You should not be able to forward information to others, but I cannot prevent you from just picking up the phone and reading the document aloud to someone. And there are logically even easier ways to do it, like taking a picture of the screen with your phone. But that is only true for your authorized users, which you should be able to trust to some extent that they are not your enemies. I'm authorizing you to use this data. I'm going to try to avoid you from doing something silly with it and help you along the way. On the other hand, keeping the bad guys out, that's a strong promise. This is a strong encryption, strong authentication. We need to be able to make sure that my competitors, my enemies, or whoever I'm trying to keep out does not get access to my files at all, and we do that. We also provide content expiration, after-the-fact revocation, so make sure that even after you send the file out, you still are in control over it, of the information, and you can revoke the file, you can kill the file, you can also put a time bound on the file, so you get real ability to control the file after you leave your hands. And finally, the ability to track your documents. If you were here early in the week, you saw a demo during the keynote, and also there was a session early this week where they showed you how you can right-click on a file, get to a portal, and see who opened this file, when, where from. And you can see a map, you can see a timeline. Very useful flows that IT people like, but users love. When we show this to end users, they say, yeah, I want to use this every day because it makes my job easier, whatever my job is. So we have all these, and we have it in a way, in a model that is very flexible and extensible, and that allows you to perform all these tasks in a natural way. Just for those that are not familiar with this technology, what we do is we take a file that is just a file in any location, and we encrypt that file with a symmetric key, a strong symmetric key, 128 bits or 256 bit AES key. We encrypt the whole file, and we stamp it with a policy that the user defines that says who can perform which operations, which also contains the necessary keys to decrypt the file, and we encrypt the whole thing, even the policy. So now you have an encrypted blob, which is completely useless and contains no data for anybody other than somebody that can get an authorization from the service. So when you try to open the file, you make a call to the service transparently and automatically by just trying to open the file. The application will call the service and will say, I need access to this file. After authenticating and validating that your identity matches the policy in the document, you get a bunch of keys and artifacts that allow you to consume the file. That doesn't mean that the file gets decrypted or unprotected. The file is still protected. You just got the rights to use it, open it in an application, and view the contents and do whatever I allow you to do without getting the whole file decrypted in the disk. So this model has many advantages. Obviously, the integration with authentication, the fact that the file never gets unprotected. Another one is that the file never travels to the service. The file stays where it is. If I have it on a desktop, that file stays in the desktop. The service that does the authorization never sees the contents of the file, and that will become an important point later. It also means, since I have an authorization layer up there, this service can authorize additional people. For example, I can authorize my agents, my systems, my malware scanner, my DLP agents, my SAP server to perform operations on these files. As an IT person, I can with management over this platform, I can say these entities are able to access this file. I don't need, as a user, to give them rights individually and to say, oh, but this will need to be scanned by my malware agent. No, that's managed centrally by IT. So with this, we have a great platform that offers many benefits that there are no other solution that does all these, not even close. We get persistent protection at rest, in transit, and in use. There are some solutions that do that, but they can protect any file, email, any kind of document, CAD drawings, PDFs, everything. We can have a very natural user experience. For the consumer, for the people receiving the files, there's nothing to do. They just open the file like they always did. They don't need to do anything or know anything. For the sender, it's a very natural experience, integrating into the applications, and very smooth, and very easy to understand as well. We keep your data separated from encryption. You can use the cloud service for protecting your data and keep your data on premises. Your data can be in an on-premises SharePoint. It can be also in the cloud. It can be in on-premises Exchange or Cloud Exchange. It can be in FCI. It can be in some other sort of storage. We don't care where you store the data. But this still can integrate with all the important services. It can seamlessly render protected email in OWA in Exchange Online. Or it can automatically protect your content into a SharePoint library, either online or on-premises. So we have great integration across the board. It allows users to track usage of their documents. I'm not going to show you that. If you're interested, you can see the recording of the session earlier this week where we show you how the user experience for tracking and revocation is. As I mentioned, it integrates seamlessly with cloud services, on-premises services, and across my environment, and integrates natively with both desktop applications, CAD systems, line of business applications, etc. Especially on the last few points, there is no other product that does that. There's nothing that seamlessly and transparently works in Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, SharePoint on-premises, Exchange on-premises, across companies. Any other encryption solution today is very limited, which means that if you opt for anything like that, your data, a big part of your data, will remain encrypted because there is no weaker encryption than not being able to encrypt something because it will break your use cases. So our target for Azure RMS is to one day, not today maybe, but one day to be able to protect every single piece of information you have, even if it's not important. There should not be a tax for protecting data, for having data encrypted. If you think about it, it's 2015, and we are still exchanging unencrypted files and unencrypted emails. That really makes no sense. So that's a goal. That's our long-term goal. Today, we say we can protect all your important stuff, the things that really matter to you, on which you're willing to put a restricted policy. But that's the kind of direction in which we're going. So moving into the what. This technology was born on premises as part of Windows in the form of Windows Rights Management Services and later Active Directory Rights Management Services, an on-premises component of Windows that integrated with Active Directory, with your on-premises directory, which means that it worked for your internal users, for the people inside your organization. And you could also, with significant work, make some explicit exchanges with a couple other organizations if you agreed to lots of things and you took significant steps to do it, but it didn't meet the promise of working across organizations transparently. It worked with Windows and Office and a few other applications on Windows, and it worked with your on-premises servers such as SharePoint, Exchange, and Windows servers, Windows file servers such as those with file classification infrastructure, which all of these looks great for the 90s, but the world has changed a lot since. So we started anew. We implemented this again, but based on the cloud. It's called Azure Rights Management Services. It is based on Azure. It integrates with Azure Active Directory, which means that it can work with your own users because Azure Active Directory can either sync or federate with your on-premises directory, so your internal users are covered. But it can also integrate with anybody that's using Azure Active Directory without any additional effort, because this directory can act as a proxy for authentication between companies. So if I protect something and I give somebody at Contoso rights, I can send the file to Contoso, and that person at Contoso will be able to open it without us having to prepare ourselves for that exchange. Azure Active Directory did that for us already. Obviously, it can integrate with Windows and Office. But it can also integrate with mobile devices, such as Android, iOS, Windows Phone, Windows RT, obviously Windows and Mac. And recently we got news that even BlackBerry 10 is integrating with RMS for email. So things are moving fast, and we're getting more and more coverage every week. Obviously, it integrates with Office 365. It's one of our cloud services, and it does a great job there. It integrates with Exchange Online, with SharePoint Online, with OneDrive for Business, etc. But it can also integrate with your on-premises servers via what we call the Azure RMS connectors, which means that your on-premises servers can offer the same integration and the same protection that you can have in the cloud. And that is important for users, because if you ask the average user, are you using the cloud, are you using on-premise, they have no clue. A user needs to be able to use this technology regardless of where they are, and be able to exchange information with the other users that may be using the cloud or not. And most companies are not in the cloud or on premises. They are in both. They have some workloads on premises, some workloads in the cloud, so they need to be able to, users need to be able to assume that this will work wherever your data needs to go. It also implies that if you're afraid of putting your most sensitive data in the cloud, you can keep it on premises. Even for whatever the reason, you can keep it on premises, and it will still be protected with the service. And remember what I said before. With this technology, your data never travels to the service. If I protect a file or I consume a file, my data stays where it is. It changes in form. It gets encrypted or decrypted, but my data stays in my device, and I only have a conversation with Azure Active Directory or Rights Management on the authorization process. One more thing that we did is to enable organizations to manage their own keys with a feature which is called Azure Key Vault, an earlier version of Azure Key Vault, which was called Key Management Services. And that allows you to perform a task that is called Bring Your Own Key, by which you create your own keys in an on-premises hardware security module, and then you perform a key synchronization with the cloud in a way that is totally opaque to Microsoft. We don't get to see your keys. We don't get to export your keys. We don't get to back up your keys. We don't get to give your keys to somebody else, even if we wanted to. We designed this explicitly so we don't have the technical ability to give this key to anyone. Even if we start coding, like to break this, we don't have that technical ability. This key is yours, and you control it. If it is a government subpoena, we can tell them, sorry, you have to talk to the customer. We don't have those keys. Or we don't have those. Worst case, we can give them a blob that contains the keys in an encrypted form with a I think it's 2048-bit encryption key, and good luck with that. I mean, if government could actually break into these devices, I will say that the US finances wouldn't be where they are. I mean, they could break into any bank in the world. So I'm pretty confident that those things are really secure. And the financial sector, the military sector, they all think the same thing, because they are basing their security in these same devices. Yes, OneDrive for Business. The question is if it works for OneDrive. It works for OneDrive for Business. I don't know what's the short-term plan for consumer. I'm sorry? Yes, this process keeps your key in hardware security module and still provide you integrating with OneDrive for Business. So, if it's not clear enough, the highlighted part is the one that you should be thinking about. We still ship the one on the left, because it's a part of Windows, but you shouldn't be starting a deployment for that one. Now, some people will say, well, but I don't want to use the cloud platform. So I want you to ask, why is that? And if, after we finish with this session, you still think you shouldn't be using the cloud platform, I want you to come to talk to me, because whatever the reason it is, we need to fix that. And we will do whatever is necessary to get everybody to use this platform, because it needs to work for you. But so far, the vast majority of reasons why people say I cannot use this are based on misunderstandings of this. I'm not saying every single reason. There are good reasons that apply in some cases, but they're a very small minority. If you think about it, for example, you say, I don't want Microsoft to have access to my content. Well, as I explained before, we don't. We can't. We never see your data, and your data can remain on premises. Or you can say, well, my most sensitive data remains on premises, and my bulk data goes to the cloud. But whichever the case, the Azure RMS service never sees your data. Maybe you say, I don't want Microsoft to have access to my keys. Well, again, we don't. We keep your keys in a way in which we don't have access to the keys. Now, some companies are saying, yeah, I still don't like the fact that you host my key, even if you don't have access to it. We're working in some additional flexibility regarding the key location. So we give you a little bit more control over that. If you're interested in those models, since we haven't spoken in public about these new patterns, I will appreciate if you can come to me later after the session and we can discuss the details to validate that what we're doing will work for you if you really need that level of control. If you say, I'm not ready to put my data in the cloud, again, your data can stay on premises. Exchange, SharePoint file servers, whatever you have, you can keep the data there. And even then, integrate those systems with the cloud. We offer you these connectors and these abilities for these applications that are on premises to talk to the cloud service and provide transparent protection. Some customers, when we talk to them, say, yeah, this is fantastic, but I need you to do A, B, or C before I trust this. So to which we respond, well, what do you gain by waiting? Yes, we will work on this feature, or maybe not. We can have a candid conversation about if the feature we see value or not. And if it adds value, we will do it eventually. But the question is, what do you gain by having your data completely unencrypted today? There is no security gain by not using a solution that solves your problem in the expectation that one day it will. Some customers say, well, we need stronger crypto, or we need X crypto. With very strong crypto, if you need to know more about it, we can discuss it later. But the important thing is it's definitely better than what we in cryptography call ROT 13, which is, or actually double ROT 13, which is no encryption at all, because that's how your data is encrypted today in most cases. And if it's not, in most cases, it needs to be decrypted before you use it. So it's a very weak protection. Some companies use PGP or SMIME or something else for encrypting the files, which is good, but it doesn't protect data in use, does not support cloud integration, does not support mobile devices at all. So that means that in 90% of the scenarios, your data is unencrypted. So that's OK. You can use that for some scenarios. But in addition to that, you should be using RMS, because it's the only one that will keep your data protected wherever it is, wherever it goes. Even if you try to open it in a mobile device or in the cloud, it will work. The same applies to many competing solutions, like cloud encryption gateways and encryption solutions, and even information protection solutions come up every day. We see them come and go continuously. The challenge with those is that they work, same as the picture that I offered you before, they work in the 90s. They offer zero practical integration with the cloud. Some claim to offer some integration. If you dig a little bit deeper, you realize that it's very, very partial integration. That means that you're turning the cloud into basically expensive storage, because your services cannot reason over data. They cannot render it in a web browser. You cannot search for the content. You cannot scan the content for malware. You cannot index it, journal it, or do things like that. So you're basically killing the value of our cloud services. It also cannot work with future applications. In the past, it was easy to hook into an application, like hook a DLL, replace something in the operating system, and that's how all of these solutions were integrated. Microsoft chose a different approach. We integrate natively into the application. Microsoft applications and third-party applications. We work with them to integrate these features inside their applications. And we think that is the only way to go, because if you haven't noticed, applications are moving in a direction where they cannot be hooked. Try to hook into Angry Birds on a phone. Try to hook a DLL in an iPhone or in a Windows phone or Android. It's impossible. You cannot do that. Maybe you can do that on a hacked phone, but it cannot apply to the general population of phones. And the same direction is beginning to happen in desktops. If you look at Windows modern applications, those applications also do not allow you to just replace DLLs or break the mold. Those are sandboxed applications. You cannot hack into them. So any application that relies on extensions, plugin, hacking DLLs, or things like that is dead in the water. They cannot work in the future. And the same thing applies to the cloud. You cannot run a plugin in a cloud service. So this is the only pattern that will work, and as far as we know, we are the only ones doing it. So that's enough of the why. What I wanted to give you is, and this part is the justification of what to do it, and a new way of thinking about it is, why am I spending so much in managing my users, my devices, my networks, my applications, and I'm not doing anything for managing my information? So with that in mind, I hope you will agree that this is a great way to go. Let's start talking about how to deploy it. And let's start with the scenario where you deploy it from scratch. This is a list of all the steps that you need to do to deploy Azure RMS. Some people will say, oh, it's a cloud service, so it's a one-click. Well, that's not true. It's a one-click to buy the service, maybe a second click to activate it. But there are a few other steps. Now, what I can say, because I have done this many times, is that this is at least 1 or 2 orders of magnitude easier than doing the equivalent task on premises. So let's go into each of these tasks separately. First, you need to create an Azure RMS tenant. To be clear, you can use Azure RMS without creating a tenant. You can sign up as end users. You just go to the portal, enter an email address, you receive a confirmation email, you click on the link provided, you enter a password twice, that's it. Well, enter username and location, and that's it. You're using Azure RMS. But that's an unmanaged organization. You don't have the ability to manage the keys, get reports, do super user access to different content protected by different users. So that serves you if you want to do a demo of RMS. But if you really want to use it or to pilot it into your organization, start with a tenant. And I recommend that you start with a trial. It costs nothing. You can set it up in a couple clicks. Any of these links will work. You can set it up in an Office 365 trial. Or if you're already using Office 365, you can just do an Azure RMS trial. It's very easy to do. It requires that you enter a phone number. And if you want a paid subscription instead of a trial, you also need a credit card number. One recommendation, if you're going to do this, and there is any chance that you will end up using this as the initiation of your real-world deployment, use your real company name. Because this name is going to be used, for example, in creating your default policies. And you don't want to have to manually edit them later. So use your real company name. If your company name is Contoso, create one that is named Contoso. You can change it later, but don't just put a funny name because you think it doesn't matter. It is going to be the name of your company from now forward. Second step, you need to enable Azure AD synchronization. Azure RMS uses Azure AD, and you can work without Azure AD synchronization. But if you do that, your users will have to know a second password, and you will have to provision the identities manually. So you need to set up AAD Sync, which is a new tool that allows you to do this synchronization automatically. Now, you don't need to synchronize the whole directory. You can only synchronize the users that you plan to use with this technology. And more importantly, you don't need to synchronize your whole set of attributes. Some companies, especially in Europe, but also in the US to some extent, are very concerned about synchronizing things like the phone numbers, locations, and things like that to the directory, because they might consider it PII, or they might just be uncomfortable with that. You don't need to. You only need to synchronize a set of minimal attributes, first name, last name, which don't need to be your real name, but you have to have a name, and your email address, your UPN, and the group membership that you're going to be using in policies. But you don't need to synchronize any other attributes in AD. Well, there are some technical attributes like location in the directory, things like that, but those are not PII. They are made up by the directory in the first place. So with the latest AAD Sync, if you have done synchronization before, the latest AAD Sync allows you to do that very smoothly and very easily. You need to validate your email domains in order to be able to use Azure RMS. Azure RMS relies on the email address as the identifier for the user. So if I send something to billg@microsoft.com and you want to open it, well, it will be cool if I could enter my email address is billg@microsoft.com, so I can open the content. So what we do is to ensure that the email addresses are in domains that have been validated. You need to perform some tasks, DNS registrations, and things like that, very quickly, but you have to do them in order to verify that you own that domain, that you're the administrator of this domain. Once you do that, we allow you to use those email addresses within the tenant. Before that, you can only use these email addresses if you have verified ownership of that email address, not the email domain. So if I send you something at billg@microsoft.com, well, you have to receive an email as billg@microsoft.com, in which case, okay, I'm going to trust you. But once you do that, all the email domains, or the email addresses in the domains that you verified work. We recommend you do not set up federation yet. Federation is an option. It's a great option. It makes the experience very smooth and nice for your users, and it allows you to keep authentication in your own premises. But don't do it yet. Wait until you have everything else working, and then you do it. Because federation is by far the most complex thing to do in setting up Azure RMS. And it's also hard to get it right. There are many possible things in your on-premises environment, like which attributes you're using, or how you have set up federation, or how you're doing attribute conversion or claim conversion. So leave it for the end, so you know that everything is working, and then you enable federation, and it should be fairly smooth. Now, if you're using Office 365, you don't have to do any of this, because you already did it. If you're using Office 365, you already have all the attributes that you need synchronized, and you maybe even have federation already in place. If not, perform these tasks. Optionally, you can perform the bring your own key ceremony, which consists on buying a Thales HSM. We support Thales HSMs today because they are the only ones that offer the technical assurances that we want, basically that we cannot access your keys. Other technologies allow you to protect the key, but you have to give access to the key to whoever is going to be using it, and we don't want that. We don't want to see your keys. So you buy one of the Thales HSMs. It doesn't need to be a high-capacity HSM because you're going to only use it once. Then you put it in a safe, and you keep it there until, I don't know, one day you decide to do something else with that key. But you don't need it for running the service. So you get that HSM. You create a key and a security word and a few other artifacts in that HSM. We provide you guys to do that. And then you synchronize the keys with the cloud. Mark the key as active, so from then on, you're no longer using the key that you had by default. And you keep your copy safe. You make sure that that key and the operator cards and everything you need related to the hardware security module are under your control and safe. Now, this is optional, and actually we recommend not to do it at this time. Start without it for two reasons. One is, well, it's hard work. Why would you do it before you need it? Leave it for the end, so you can evaluate the technology without it. The second one is that there is one exception, and this is an important one. Exchange Online integration with RMS doesn't work if you do the bring your own key, which means, doesn't mean that you cannot protect emails if you do bring your own key. It means that you're not going to be able to view your emails in OWA and a few other such limitations in Exchange Online. So if you're using Exchange Online and you want the Exchange Online integration, which is very desirable, we recommend to hold the bring your own key until that support is there. The good news is that that support is coming. It's coming later this year. I don't have an exact date because that's work that the Exchange team is doing, but it's sometime later this year, and that will basically shut down this exception. And at that point, you can do the bring your own key. The additional good news is that you can do the bring your own key at any point in the future. Your existing content will remain accessible. The new content will be protected with the new keys. So there is no urge. Any company will take several months to evaluate, deploy, create the use cases, train whoever they need to train, help desk, etc. So probably by the time you're done with this, you will be able to perform the bring your own key. You can do the bring your own key now, but be aware that you're going to lose some functionality inside Exchange for protected content. So a little bit more about bring your own key. So those are Thales HSMs. You create your key on premises. You perform the bring your own key. The key goes into the HSM. At that point, you yourself do some tasks on the configuration saying this key is marked as non-exportable, non-recoverable, non-nothing. You're responsible to perform those tasks, so you know that the key, Microsoft cannot extract the key. Then you get the key injected into the HSM, and from them on, Azure RMS can use your key to provide you with the service, but we cannot take your key out of the HSM world. We can replicate it among HSMs that work in this security world, in this environment, to provide you with the service, with a highly redundant and performant environment, but we cannot extract the keys. We also provide you with near real-time logs of every operation performed there. So you can see that we're not abusing those keys. If you start seeing like unrelated consumptions of these keys or usage of these keys, well, you can suspect something and then kill your tenant or kill your key. Basically, you block us access if you don't like what you're seeing. Another step that you may want to take at this point is to enable onboarding controls. If you're not using RMS today, actually, there is no harm in enabling RMS for everyone. But maybe you want to take some time to train your help desk. Somebody says, hey, I cannot open this document. What does it mean? And you want to give them some advice and help desk so they know how to respond. Oh, you don't have rights because you are not in this policy or whatever. So you may want to do it take it slow, take a few weeks to do the deployment. So you can enable it. By default, everybody has access to RMS. Everybody in your company and your directory can use RMS. And then you can run a PowerShell commandlet, the one there at the bottom, the set AADRM onboarding control policy. By the way, AADRM is the old name for Azure RMS. That's why it's there. With that, you enter a group. And anybody that's in that group will be able to use RMS. Everybody that's not in that group will be able to consume content if they receive it, but they will not be able to protect content and send it to others, which is what you want to avoid during an initial stage. You don't want it to propagate like wildfire, which is what tends to happen when you give a tool for collaboration to your users. So controlling the growth via a group is a great tool. You can add users over a few weeks and get everybody using RMS once you know that you're ready to support it. After you did that, you can create custom policies. Microsoft provides you with 2 default policies: company confidential read-only. We plan to change these and provide a different set of default policies in the future, which are going to be more classification-oriented. Something like public, internal, confidential, top secret, or something like that. I don't know exact taxonomy. But the idea is that you get a set of default templates with default policies that you can use out of the box. But we also offer you the option of creating your own templates, your own policies, that say, for example, my marketing department can view this information and the engineers can edit it, or whatever policies you may want to create. So for this, you go to Azure Rights Management Portal. I'm going to show you how. You create a template, define names and descriptions for the portal, for the templates, define the rights, scope it, which means saying who will be able to apply this policy. Now, I must clarify, scoping is an option that is in preview only. For a couple more months, it's going to be in preview. Office doesn't natively support what we call departmental templates, which are the templates that are only visible to a bunch of users in the company. You can give rights to a selected set of users in your company, but everybody will see the template if it's not a departmental template. Everybody will be able to apply it. Departmental templates are available today, but since the user experience in Office is not smooth today because we don't have native integration and you have to run some scripts to use them, we're not going to officially release them until a couple months from now. I think early July is when we are expecting this to happen. For now, you see a preview tag in there in that part of the templates. When you define your templates, it's important that you pay attention to names and descriptions because that's the user interface. That's what users will choose. If you choose a name that is 50 characters long, the list that the users see will be 50 characters long. And also, it's important that it's clear and concise, and it means what you expect it to mean. Like if you say top secret, that's good. If you say this content will be protected with a policy that will restrict, that's confusing. Users cannot use that. Use something simple and meaningful and that the users will understand. And the other important thing is that they need to be in the languages users use. If there are people in your company that do not speak English, you need to add a description and a name in the language they use. The system will handle them automatically and deliver to them based on the language they are using in their clients. But that's important because deniability is a problem that you may have. If somebody opens content, they see they cannot print it, copy it, but then they take a camera and take a picture. When you go to them to fire them because they broke your policies, they say, me no speak English, and they're out. They can fake that they didn't understand the policy, or my English is not good enough, I didn't understand what it meant. If you put it in their own language, there is no deniability. Like, in fact, the picture that we saw that you took with your phone has that policy embedded into it, so you cannot lie to us. And as I said, the departmental templates option, you can add it later. You can start playing with it now, but in a couple of months, you're going to be able to deploy templates to your users. So here's how it looks. You come to Azure AD portal. In the Azure AD portal, you go to Azure AD. You go to the Azure portal. You choose Azure AD. In the right, you will see a rights management option. And you choose there, and you go into the template section. The templates, you say create a new template. You enter the language, the default language for this template, name and description. You later will be able to add more languages. And then you are asked to enter additional information, such as whether this policy allows for offline access or not, or for a limited time. That's important because the more you allow for offline access, the less control you have over the document. For example, if you revoke a document in which you allow a month of offline access, revocation won't be effective for a month for some users that already opened the content. So you keep it short, but not so short that nobody can board on a plane without losing access to their documents. You can set expiration and a few other settings. You set the rights, say who can view this content, who can print it, who can copy, etc. And then you publish the template. Once you're convinced that this is what you want, you publish. This makes it available to users. In Office 2013, templates get downloaded automatically. In Office 2010, you need to activate a task in Windows that will download the templates. At the end of this session, I'm going to provide you some links with the instructions to do those easy tasks. Once you have created your templates, and this is counterintuitive, but at that point, you should activate RMS, not before, because otherwise users are seeing a changing experience. So you create your templates, you understand what you're doing, and then either in Office 365, there is an option on the left that is called Service Settings, Rights Management. You click there, Manage, Activate. And that turns on RMS for you. If you are in this portal, you can activate it. In the Azure RMS portal, you can activate it from here as well. And that makes the service available to all the users, or the users which you authorize if you enable onboarding controls. And you're ready to use it. This makes it available to client applications. So if you are in Office 2013, now you go to the option to do protect a document or protect an email, do not forward, or any of those. Those are going to be available. The templates are going to be visible, and you can do it. Now, you may want to enable integration into Exchange Online or SharePoint Online if you're using that. That is extremely easy in the case of SharePoint. You have to go to the global settings for SharePoint, and you choose the option of Use RMS. That's it. And then, for each library that you want to automatically protect, meaning that the users don't have to worry, you're going to say anything that goes into this library is going to be automatically protected when users download it. You go into the library settings, information rights management settings, and then you enable IRM there. There are a few other options to set, but the defaults work pretty well. You can add additional groups, you can add expiration, you can add other settings, but in general, just saying this is the policy I'm going to use enables IRM in SharePoint. What you do there is to say, anytime somebody downloads a document from this library, they're going to get a protected document, and the document is going to be protected to their identity with the same rights they have on the library. So if the library gives them author rights, they will get author rights on RMS. If they get view-only rights, they will get view-only rights in RMS. It's an enforcement of what you see in the rights you set in the library. Unfortunately, Exchange Online is not as easy. You have to do some PowerShell there, but it's nothing terrible. You have to tell Exchange Online where the Azure RMS keys are. And by the way, this is the reason why it doesn't work today with Bring Your Own Key. What Exchange Online does today is to sniff your keys out of Azure RMS and handle them separately. So if you cannot get your keys, it cannot work with Azure RMS. That's what's being changed in the next few months. It's going to work natively with Azure RMS instead of getting a copy of the keys. But for now, you have to do set IRM configuration, tell it what the keys are, and then run this second command line, which is import RMS trusted publishing domain, which is a fancy way of saying import the keys. And then enable IRM, enable all of IRM functionality, OWA, Exchange Active Sync IRM, transport encryption, all that. Is set IRM configuration, internal licensing enabled, true. There are more details, but this is the 3 steps that you need to do. Once you do that, your users, for example, will be able to consume content that was protected in OWA, or they will be able to protect content in OWA, or in mobile devices that support Exchange Active Sync IRM. One thing, small detail, if you try to do it before running these commands, and you go right afterwards, it's not going to work for a day, because Exchange caches the user interface for up to a day. So either don't do it before, or try a second user afterwards to verify that it works. Otherwise, you're going to be fumbling, why is this not working? And it's just that it takes up to a day to refresh the user interface. But if you try with a different user, it will just work. Now, what if you don't have Exchange Online or SharePoint Online, or you just want to also do Exchange or SharePoint on premises? The process on the SharePoint and Exchange service is the same. It's, well, not in the case of Exchange, it's slightly simpler. You only have to do the set IRM configuration. But But there is one thing that you have to do before, because both Exchange on-premises and SharePoint on-premises were designed before Azure RMS. So they do not work with Azure RMS directly. You have to use what is called the Azure RMS connector. The Azure RMS connector is a very lightweight, very easy to deploy service. You take a virtual machine, you install it there, a couple of them for redundancy, and you tell it, I'm Peter or admin at contoso.com, here's my password. It connects to the service, it downloads whatever configuration it needs to configure, and you're set to go. And then you go into Exchange and SharePoint and run a script that configures them to talk to the connector. We provide that script. So you say, this is an Exchange server, configure it to use the connector, here's the URL for my connector, and then this server is going to work with the connector. Very easy to do. I wish, well, we didn't have to do it at all, but it's as easy as it gets. The connector takes very little maintenance, actually no maintenance. It stores no keys, nothing. It stores no information persistently. It just, every time it boots, it connects to the service, and it downloads the configuration. So there's nothing that you need to back up or keep running. If you wipe all your connectors and you install it again, everything will work. So it's a very easy to keep platform. Well, this is the depiction of how it works. You have Exchange servers, SharePoint servers, Windows file servers that run the file classification infrastructure to automatically protect documents. They talk to the connector, and the connector talks to Azure RMS. And users, this is important, users don't talk to Azure RMS through the connector. Users talk directly. You don't need the connector for your users, and if you deploy it, your users are not going to use it. Your users still talk directly to Azure RMS. This is only for servers, and in particular for servers that were not designed to use Azure RMS directly. Installing it is terribly simple. You say you download the Azure RMS connector, you run it on a computer, you tell it install it here, accept the license agreement, enter your administrator credentials for the tenant. It can be not necessarily the tenant administrator, it can be the connector administrator, which is a role, but normally you will use your tenant administrator. And that's it. You click install, and it's done. Now, after that, you need to authorize which servers you want to use the connector. You run the administration tool, and it says, add a server. Well, I'm going to add an Exchange server, for example. I choose Exchange, SharePoint, or FCI there. I choose which identity is the server using. For example, in the case of Exchange, it will be Exchange servers, which is a group that contains all my Exchange servers. In SharePoint, it might be the SharePoint library X or whatever I'm using. And gets added to the list. That's it. So it's very, very easy to do. So server integration is very straightforward. In the cloud, it's even easier, but even on-premises, it doesn't take much work. After that, and this is one of the final steps, you need to deploy some software on the clients. By default, Office 2013 works with Azure RMS. There's nothing to deploy there if you don't want to. But Office 2010 was released before Azure RMS, so you need to deploy an agent. It's called the Azure RMS, or the RMS Sharing App. The RMS Sharing App allows both Office 2010 to work with Azure RMS, and it also enhances both Office 2010 and Office 2013 with some options that are very, very useful. For example, Share Protected allows you to send protected content to somebody outside of your organization and give them instructions on how to consume it. And it also supports any file format, and it adds lots of fancy features. And it allows you to track your content and all that. So it's highly recommended to deploy it on both Office 2010 and 2013. But in 2010, it's necessary. If somebody receives content protected with Azure RMS in an Office 2010 client that doesn't have the RMS Sharing App installed, they're going to see an error that says, you need to install the RMS Sharing App in order to do this. Click here. They click there, and then the application gets installed. One comment about this application. Today, it needs administrator's privileges. So we allow you to do an unattended installation to bypass that problem, because we know that most users do not have or should not have administrator privileges on their boxes. An update is coming in the next few weeks, I think it's 2 weeks or so, that's going to remove that requirement. So you're going to be able to install it without administrator privileges. It's still recommended that you deploy it for your users, that you do an unattended file and run it via GPO or something like that, and everybody gets it. But if you miss someone, they will be able to install it even if they are not administrators. So this is how the RMS Sharing App looks like. A user installs it, or you install it. Then in Office, they're going to see some additional options, such as that Share Protected option up there, which now has also an option to track content. Outside of Office, in the desktop, they can right-click on any file and say Protect. and they choose a policy, or they can do share protected. So this allows you to protect a text file, an image file, a CAD drawing, or whatever you need to protect. So if you want to give your users easy instructions, tell them, right-click on the file and say protect. The Office integration is kind of a bonus. They will discover it on themselves. When you do that, when you, for example, choose the share protected option, users see a very easy-to-use user interface where they ask for an email address or addresses of the people they want to share the documents with. And then they move the slider to say, very limited access, view only, or full control of the document, or whatever you want them to be, and a few other options, such as send me an email every time somebody opens this document, or this content expires, or things like that. And as a result, they get an email that contains the file, protected in multiple formats, so it can be accessed from mobile devices that do not have Office, for example. That's the PDF, it's a protected PDF file, and the Office file as well, and instructions on how to open this file if you're not using Azure RMS already. So that's very easy to use. That's the reason why we say you should deploy this file, this application, because it makes the user experience much easier. For consuming the file, there is no need to an enhanced user experience. They just open the file, and it renders as a regular file with the policy on screen and with the restrictions that you implemented. So that's it. That's all there is to deploy Azure RMS. Now, some of you may already be using ADRMS, the early version of these that run on premises. So for your scenario, we released what is called the Azure RMS Migration Toolkit. So you can migrate from ADRMS to Azure RMS with no loss of access to data very easily. It's the easiest deployment scenario. So as you migrate clients, you will see new functionality added to these clients. For example, the track option, track content, or share protected, or things like that will become useful when you migrate them. Mobile devices, you don't need to configure, you don't need to do anything. In Office 2010 and Office 2013, you need to deploy some scripts to the clients to reconfigure them, but it's actually fairly straightforward. And we're also going to get rid of that for Office 2013 soon. So they're going to be migrated automatically. The steps, very easy, similar to the previous ones, but easier each one. You create the Azure RMS tenant, you configure AAD, that's unavoidable. Then you download the migration toolkit, and you take your keys from on-premises, and you run a command that takes them from your on-premises RMS into Azure RMS. You import them into Azure RMS, you activate the tenant, you enable the same templates and policies that you already had, you enable them in the cloud. You reconfigure the clients via some scripts, you reconfigure your servers by deploying the RMS connector, and then you shut down ADRMS. And if you want, at the end of that, you may want to do the bring your own key with a new key, so you don't have the same key that you had on premises before. The old key is still available for consuming the existing content, but you get a new key for all new content. I'm not expecting you to parse this diagram now, but what you want to see here is that there are two ways to do this. In one, you import your keys in software. You have them in software in our ADRMS, and you import them in software in Azure RMS. We don't like that much, that process, but it's the cheapest one. You don't have to buy any hardware security module. The other one is you take your key from ADRMS. If it's in a hardware security module, you do the bring your own key thing. If it's not in a hardware security module, you put in a hardware security module. We provide you with the scripts to do that, and then you put in Azure RMS. That way, you ensure that Microsoft never saw your keys. The reason why we like that much is because we know that we cannot leak your keys that way. And since you have this key in software in your side, well, we cannot offer really guarantees that this key it was properly managed. You probably can offer those guarantees, but we don't even want to be in that discussion. You have the key imported into an HSM, and then you gave it to us, and then we say, well, we know that your key has always been safe since it got into our hands. So as I said, there are three ways. Software protected key in ADRMS can go as a software protected key into Azure RMS. We don't like that, but it's an option. Software protected key in Azure RMS goes into an HSM and then bring your own key. And finally, it was in an HSM before, it gets directly into the cloud without ever being in software. Just for reference, you're going to have to do some PowerShell here and some commandlets. And this is not the easiest PowerShell. It's about managing hardware security modules. You have to run the commandlets specifically for those security modules. We provide great guidance on that. So you should be able to follow it. We haven't seen any problems following these instructions, but it's quite a few. It's like 10 or 15 operations that you need to perform. So that's the pain there is in migrating. One more commandlet, and then you're done. Once you did that, the templates, the policies that you had created on premises get sucked into the cloud automatically. Those commandlets include that process for migrating your templates. And by default, these templates are disabled or are archived, but you go to the cloud and you say, publish, 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 and you'll publish the same templates that you had on premises, and your users will not see the difference. They were using RMS before, now they're using Azure RMS once they migrate them, but they will see the same policies, and they will not know that something has changed, other than they will suddenly see new functionality come up. Now, final step is to migrate your users who are using RMS. So to migrate your clients, you have to deploy a script to each client. Via GPO works fine. This key, what it does is deletes the configuration for the client, so it forces it to reactivate against Azure RMS, and it introduces some redirections to tell client, if you ever find content that was protected in ADRMS, don't ask ADRMS for a license, ask Azure RMS. It's basically a redirection. Every time you want to open something that has an ADRMS URL in it, go to Azure RMS instead. For Exchange 2013, 2010, or SharePoint 2010 to 2013, you have to use the connectors. You're going to have to deploy the connector. Same instructions as before. You just reconfigure them as if you had never used ADRMS, and they will start working with the cloud. For mobile devices, there is no additional work. We do a transparent redirection. If a mobile device, you light up and you were using ADRMS before, the client will go to Azure RMS once it sees that there is a tenant up there that has your keys. So you don't have to have any work there. So at that point, you moved to this model in which Azure RMS is at the center, all your clients are redirected, your directory is synchronized, and your on-premises servers and cloud servers are using Azure RMS, and optionally, you're using the bring your own key. Before we're done, a few hints for the seamless migration. First, start without federation. I said this before, but federation is the hardest part in all this. And federation, it is evolving. It's much easier than it was 3-4 years ago, but it's still hard. So start without it. Once everything is working, you introduce federation into the mix, and with luck, everything will still work. If it doesn't, you know that there was a problem with federation, and you're not wondering, what is it that is broken here? Pilot with the RMS sharing app. It makes the user experience much, much easier. Explaining users that in Office you have this option, but in this other version of the Office you have this other option, and it works this way. And the user interface inside Office is not as clear. You have to add each individual user and give them rights. With RMS sharing app, it's just, you can move a slider, you're set. And another important hint is start with very explicit use cases. One recipe for failure in any security technology is to tell your users, when you have sensitive information, protect it with this technology. That's so vague that users are going to fail 100% of the time. They're never going to do it because they don't know. I'm clicking on this button. Is that a sensitive operation? They don't think in those terms. So what you do is you build a guide that says, when you're going to share a price list with your customers, click these 3 buttons first. When you're going to share a CAD drawing with your suppliers for a bidding process, do this, this, this. You don't need to map every single process in your environment, but you just map a few and give them to your users. Your users will use them because they know how to follow instructions. If you tell them, when A, do B and C, they do B and C when they hit A. That works wonderfully, and they will discover additional use cases on their own. You don't need to tell them everything they need to do, but they will just mentally map and say, oh, if I can do this for a price list, I can also do this for a bidding process, or I can also do this for this other flow. Just give them some representative use cases, very concise, and it will work. By the way, we're building a bunch of those guys. We already have one for sharing a price list, but we're going to build a bunch for different markets. So we're going to put them in our portal, so you can just download them, customize them with your details, like company name or things like that, and then give them to your users so you get them started. You don't need to cover everything. They will discover it on their own, but give them a few use cases to get them started and to get the pattern going in their minds. Another recommendation is using onboarding controls. In general, it's easier if you restrict RMS to 10, 15 users, you exchange data, and you discover things. You say, oh, I can use it this way. Oh, but I need integration to this other application. Or, oh, I forgot to deploy this. Use it with a few users, and then go with the full bang. There is no problem deploying 10,000 users overnight, because this is a very, it's not problematic technology from the end user point of view. But it's much easier to understand how to deploy it to users if you have experienced it first. So start with a bunch of users, and then extend it to all your users. Finally, a few gotchas. Authenticated firewalls. I still do not understand why people use them, but because I guess it's keeping hackers away from the internet. I never understood the idea. But if you're using them, you need some special considerations. We have documentation of how to configure your application to use an authenticated firewall, but if you're trying to use the RMS sharing app and it doesn't work, that's 90% of the problem typically is with authenticated firewalls. Federation is, well, the other 90% of the problems, an improperly set up federation. But if RMS is already working and you add federation and something stops working, you know what it is. And we have tools to troubleshoot very easily the federation part, and also tools for troubleshooting RMS client problems. So you can use those, and I'm going to send you some links later. Don't bring your own key to start. Do it at the end. Do it when you need it. Don't do it before, because it will prevent you from lighting up the Exchange Online integration. So probably by the time you're ready, this will be out, and you will be able to bring your own key. But don't start with that. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to pilot the Exchange Online integration. If you're having trouble, we have a bunch of very good documents for helping you troubleshooting. Normally, the RMS part is very smooth, but some things like, as I said, authenticated proxies, federation, those cause a little bit of trouble. We have very good guidance there. We just released the RMS Analyzer tool. It's a great tool. You run it, and it tells you everything is OK, or, oh, federation is not working. Oh, you cannot access the internet, or whatever the problem is. And if you hit problems, and the tool either solves your problem or does not solve your problem, please, please, please let us know. Because if the tool didn't solve your problem, we need to change the tool so it solves your problem, or maybe change the product so it doesn't have this problem in the first place. And if it solves your problem, it helps us to know, yeah, this is a valuable feature. We need to invest more to make it even better. If you're still having problems, that email address down there is my whole team. We're all monitoring this DL. Please don't post it on Facebook or something like that. But this is for you. If you have problems, let us know. We need to help you. You shouldn't have problems in the first place. If you do, we will help. So with that, a quick recap. I have like 3 minutes left. First, do you need to do this? And I'm for a strong yes. There is no reason why in 2015 we're not managing our information. And we really seriously think that this is the only tool that allows you to really do that across the company and for all data types, emails, and documents. We recognize there are some gaps, like the Exchange Online integration. We're working very, very diligently and very fast to solve all these. The RMS that you saw 2 months ago is not the same as you saw today, and it's not going to be the same as you will see 2 months from now. We keep evolving. If you have problems, if you see limitations, ask us. And we will. The answer is going to very likely be wait a couple months and you will be there. And if it's not our plan, and it's a blocker for you, we will work with you to get this solved, because this solution needs to work for everyone. This cannot be a niche solution. It has to work for every company in the planet, for every type of document, on every scenario. So it should be in your future. Deploying it is easy, but there is some integration work, for example, with Exchange on Premises, Exchange Online, SharePoint, and all that, which is generally not hard, but it has to be done. If you are using ADRMS, a migration is the easiest path. You don't have to recreate your templates. You don't have to reconfigure things. You just repoint your clients, and that's basically it. If you, after this session, or after evaluating RMS, or after running a pilot, you conclude that RMS is not for you, please let us know, because it's not you that need to change. We need to change. Whatever is missing, we have to do it. And again, we want this to be like the TCP/IP. Like nobody wonders if they should be using TCP/IP. This needs to be the standard. Needs to be for everybody. So if you think it is not for you, we need to change something, and we will. Finally, some links. If well, you want to be up to date on the latest changes, You can get news from our blogs, and they're coming very fast. If you want to learn what's next, I didn't talk much about this. There was a session earlier this week, I think on Tuesday, in which we covered some of the roadmap, but our roadmap decks change monthly because we work on a very short life cycle. We tell you what we're going to be doing in the next 3 months, and you tell us what we're going to be doing in the following 3 months. So please see that deck and say, oh, this doesn't cover my needs. Let us know. If you have to explain it to somebody, we provide you with a presentation and demo slides, and a good introduction with more details about architecture and use scenarios down at the bottom. And also remember the email address that I gave you in the previous slide, askipteam@microsoft.com. Let us know if you're having trouble, if you think this is great, if you think it's not, if you need more help. Please, again, let us know. I'm going to be here for a few more minutes, so if you have questions, and well, if you have questions that you want to ask publicly, we can afford 1 or 2 minutes more, and if not, well, yes, question here. Thank you. Waiting shipment and finalizing the beta process. And for the Outlook part, that's coming, I think, later this month. For the rest of mobile Office, it's going to take a couple months or 3 months. Don't know exactly the date, but I already seen it, and it's working fine.
How does RMS integrate with discovery tools and SharePoint?
How does RMS integrate with the discovery tools, SharePoint, and the like? Well, for SharePoint, it does. Don't worry about that, because in SharePoint we do the encryption on download. So for SharePoint, it doesn't see them as protected documents. There are additional features that are being built into SharePoint to even be able to work with a DLP agent and more. So it will discover based on patterns and things like that. In Exchange, we have transport decryption. So when the document goes through the inspection phase, it's decrypted temporarily, analyzed, and then re-encrypted. So we do that. And with third-party tools, we work with many of them, Documentum and many other like that, to provide integration inside those tools. And if the tool that you want to use doesn't work with RMS, send us an email, and if possible, copy the people, your contact in that company. We will work with them, because it's extremely easy to do this integration. It's just that they have to know about it to do it. And some companies haven't crossed paths with RMS yet. Yes. The answer is yes.
I have a question about kind of override. Because if I say I encrypt a lot of documents with a restricted policy and then I get run over by a trap, I kind of hold that encryption in those documents. You can override that.
Well, I hope you won't get run over by a truck, but yes. So there are several mechanisms, but the most general one is you can assign super user privileges to a special group of users, and they have the right to decrypt anything that you encrypt. Now, if the content was encrypted with a template, you don't need to do that, because anybody that's in the template will have access to that content. But super user can take any content and reassign it to another user, like re-encrypt it with the same policy and assign a new user. Another thing that we do, which I don't think is applicable if somebody was run over by a truck, but when somebody gets laid off, we recommend putting their email addresses as proxy addresses on the user's manager, so they will have access to whatever this user had access. Or you can do that on the replacement person. And we offer some other mechanisms, but those two are the primary ones.
Is the super user available through Office 365?
Yes, the super user is available through Office 365. Today, you have to designate super users individually, like email addresses for each of the super users. We are changing that, so you designate a group, and then you populate the group with whatever users you want. That's going to be changing in the next few months. On the existing behavior, yes, it's in the... there is a document here in the intro to RMS. At the bottom, there is a roadmap. And in the roadmap, in the sense that it tells you how to enable it, it also tells how to enable super user. The change to make it group-based, that's not published yet.
The geolocation of when files are open, how do you handle the private IP spaces?
So the geolocation, we don't today integrate with GPS. We are based on IP addresses, so we know what's the exit point for this user. So that can be fooling you about some of the aspects. The important thing about this is well, this should not be going in this country where I don't have partners or operations. So for that purpose, it still works. We are working, but still in early stages, on integrate more with GPS or whatever information we have.
Internal would probably have our PAT address then, basically?
Yes. Yeah. So we cannot like map the exact location, but once we do that with GPS, it's going to take a while because it's different on each device and all that. But one day we plan to do that, and that will give you like, you are here.
Thank you.
I mean, we don't want to pinpoint your backyard, but at least your city, we should be able to do that.
I was just curious.
There are privacy issues there. You're next. Okay.